My name is Harrison Cole. I'm 71 years old, and I just discovered that the only daughter I raised is a monster. I returned from Canada after 2 weeks at my mother's deathbed, only to find my wife, Diane, locked in our basement. She was dehydrated, filthy, and on the verge of delirium, padlocked in the darkness for 14 days. When I asked her who did this, she whispered a name. Heather, our daughter. I didn't call 911. I called my lawyer, and that very night, I began the process to take back every single thing I ever gave her. Before I continue this story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and hit the like button if you believe betrayal, especially by family, demands justice. The Uber ride from the airport felt longer than the flight from Canada. 2 weeks, 14 days, sitting in a sterile hospital room, holding my 90-year-old mother's hand, watching her fade away. I was exhausted to the bone. The flight attendant had to wake me when we landed. I tipped the driver, grabbed my single carry-on, and walked up the driveway toward the home Diane and I had shared for 25 years. It was just after 8 p.m. The house was dark. I frowned. Diane, my wife, always left the porch light on for me. Always. She knew I was coming home tonight. I fumbled for my keys. The metal felt cold against my skin. The lock turned, and I pushed the door open. Diane! I called out. The silence that answered me was absolute. It was a heavy, dead silence, not the comfortable quiet of an empty house. It was the silence of absence. The air felt stale. Diane! I'm home, I called again. Louder this time. Nothing. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I walked through the living room. The mail was piled up on the small table by the door, unopened. How strange. Diane never let the mail pile up. I went to the kitchen. The coffee maker was clean and dry. No dishes in the sink. It looked unused. My heart began to beat with a low, heavy rhythm. Maybe she went out. Maybe she forgot I was coming back. I walked to the door leading to the garage. I flipped the light switch, and there it was. Her blue sedan parked in its usual spot. She was home, but the house was silent. My mind raced. Did she fall in the shower? Did she have a stroke? I ran upstairs, taking the steps 2 at a time, something my 7-1-year-old knees protested immediately. Diane! Our bedroom was empty. The bed was perfectly made. The bathroom was empty. I checked the guest room. Empty. I went back downstairs. The confusion was turning into cold dread. Where could she be? I stood in the kitchen trying to think, trying to make sense of it. Her car was here. Her purse was on the kitchen counter. Her keys were right next to it. She was here. She had to be here. And then I heard it. Asterisk. Thump. Asterisk. It was faint. Muffled. It came from beneath my feet. I froze, stopped breathing, listening. Asterisk. Thump. Thump asterisk. It was coming from the basement. My blood turned to ice. I walked slowly toward the basement door, the one at the end of the kitchen hallway. I reached for the knob, but my hand stopped. There was something on the door that shouldn't be there. A heavy-duty metal hasp, freshly screwed into the door frame, and through it, a large brass padlock. My padlock, the one I kept in the garage for the outdoor shed, it was locked from the outside. I stared at it. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. This was impossible. It was a mistake. A prank. Diane? I whispered, pressing my face against the door. Diane? Are you down there? A sound came from the other side. A low moan, like an animal. A sound of pure misery, then a frantic, weak rattling of the knob from the inside. Asterisk. Bang, 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 asterisk. Weak, desperate, muffled fists beating against the thick wood. Diane! I roared in panic, finally breaking my paralysis. I grabbed the padlock. It was solid. I'm here. I'm going to get you out. The flight from Canada was a gray blur. The hum of tires on the highway was the only sound piercing the fog of my exhaustion. 2 weeks, 14 straight days. Sitting in a recliner that smelled of chlorine and regret, holding my mother's fragile, paper-thin hand. At 71, you understand that these goodbyes are part of life, but it doesn't make them easier. All I wanted was to be home. I wanted to sit in my own recliner, drink a cup of coffee that didn't come from a hospital vending machine, and feel my wife Diane's hand on my shoulder. I paid the driver with the crinkle of bills, the loudest sound I'd heard in an hour. I grabbed my carry-on. I travel light. Always have. I walked up the cracked concrete path toward our small brick house in the neighborhood where I've lived for 40 years. The first thing that hit me was the darkness. The porch light was off. I paused, my key halfway to the lock. Diane knew I was coming. I had called her from the airport during my layover. "I'll be home around 8, honey," I had told her. "Leave the light on for me." She had laughed with that warm sound that always soothed me. Always, Harrison, always. But the light was off. A flicker of irritation was quickly replaced by a prickle of unease. Maybe the bulb burned out. I fumbled for the keyhole in the dark, my fingers stiff and cold. The lock turned with a familiar click, and I pushed the door open. The house was silent. "Diane?" I called, dropping my bag by the door. "I'm home." The silence that replied wasn't the comfortable quiet of an empty house. It was a heavy, dead silence. The air felt stale. Still. I flipped the entry light switch. Nothing. I tried the living room lamp. Nothing. The power was out. I grunted in frustration. Just what I needed. I pulled out my smartphone. The screen glowed harshly in the pitch black. I pressed the kitchen light switch. It flickered and turned on. The kitchen light worked, but nothing else. Strange. Maybe just a blown fuse for the living room, but the unease didn't leave. It deepened. "Diane," I called again. My voice, louder now, echoed slightly in the hallway. I saw the mail piled on the small table by the door. A thick stack bills, junk mail, a few magazines. Diane never let the mail accumulate. She was meticulous. It was a little ritual of hers to sort it the moment she brought it in. This pile was at least a week old. My heart, which had been beating with the slow, tired rhythm of grief, gave a sudden, hard lurch. I walked into the kitchen. The coffee maker was clean and dry. The dish rack was empty. There was a faint, sour smell in the air I couldn't place. I checked the refrigerator. It was humming. The light came on when I opened it. It was full of food, groceries she must have bought right after I left. Most of it was now wilted. A carton of milk was a week past its expiration date. She hadn't just gone out for the evening. She hadn't been here. My mind raced. A stroke. A fall. I ran toward the garage door, my 7-1-year-old knees screaming in protest. I threw the door open. Her blue sedan was parked in its usual spot. My blood turned to ice. She was home. The car was here. Her purse was on the kitchen counter, right where she always left it. Her keys were next to it. She hadn't left this house. "Diane!" I roared the name, tearing it from my throat. I ran down the short hall to our bedroom. I didn't bother with the lights. I used my phone flashlight. The beam sliced the darkness. The bed was perfectly made. The bathroom was empty. I checked the guest room. My old office empty, empty. I stumbled back to the kitchen, my mind refusing to connect the dots. She's here. Her car is here. Her purse is here. But the house is empty. It didn't make sense. I stood there panting, the adrenaline of panic making me shake. I was alone in the dark. Silent house. No, not silent. I heard something. Asterisk. Thump. Asterisk. I froze. I turned off my phone light, plunging the house back into near darkness, straining my ears. It was faint, muffled. It was coming from below. Asterisk thump. Thump asterisk. It was coming from the basement. I walked slowly and deliberately toward the basement door at the end of the kitchen hallway. My heart was a drum against my ribs. Maybe a raccoon got in, a burst water pipe. I reached for the old brass knob. My fingers brushed against something new, something cold metal. I turned my phone light back on, aiming the beam at the door. My breath hitched in my throat. A heavy-duty metal hasp had been screwed into the doorframe. A new hasp. The screws still gleamed. And hanging through it was a large brass padlock. My padlock. I recognized it instantly. It was the heavy-duty one I kept in the garage for the outdoor shed, the one I used to secure my expensive tools. It was locked from the outside. My mind shattered. This wasn't a raccoon. This wasn't a broken pipe. This was a prison. "Diane," I whispered, my voice trembling, pressing my face against the wood. "Diane, are you down there?" A sound came from the other side. A low, agonizing moan. A sound of pure misery that barely sounded human, then a frantic, weak rattling of the knob from inside. Asterisk, bang, 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 asterisk. Muffled, weak, desperate fists beating against the inside of the thick wood. Diane, I roared, blind panic taking control. I grabbed the padlock and pulled, the metal biting into my hands, but it held fast. I'm here, honey. I'm here. I'm going to get you out. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I ran to the garage, my mind singular in its purpose. I grabbed the sledgehammer I kept for projects. I ran back, raised it high above my head, and brought it down on the padlock with all the force and rage my 7-1-year-old body possessed. The metal shrieked, but didn't break. Asterisk, bang, 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 asterisk. The weak sound from inside spurred me on. I swung the hammer again. The wood around the hasp splintered, again. The hasp ripped from the doorframe with the sound of tearing wood and tortured metal. The door flew open, banging against the wall. The stench that hit me was overwhelming. It was the smell of sickness, of waste, of despair. It made me stumble back a step. Diane! Diane! I screamed into the darkness, my phone light cutting a path down the stairs. And the light found her. The beam of my phone cut through the blackness, illuminating a nightmare. The smell hit me first. A sour, gut-wrenching stench of urine, waste, and decay that made me gag. It was the smell of a cage. The light found her. She was in the far corner, curled up on a pile of filthy blankets I didn't recognize. It was Diane, but it wasn't. This creature was skeletal. Her skin, usually warm and tan, was a pale, ashen gray stretched tight over her cheekbones. Her hair was matted with filth. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. She was wearing the same clothes I remembered her saying goodbye in 2 weeks ago, now stiff with grime. She didn't even look toward the light. She just flinched, curling tighter into a ball, making a low, terrified sound. For a second, my mind just snapped. It refused to accept the reality of what I was seeing. This couldn't be my wife. It couldn't be my home. Around her, scattered on the damp concrete floor, were 3 empty plastic water bottles and 2 torn wrappers of generic brand crackers. That was it. That was what they had left her for 14 days. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a kidnapping. This was a calculated, slow execution. They had left her just enough to prolong the agony, to make her starve, to make her waste away in her own filth. Diane, I whispered. The name felt strange in my mouth. At the sound of my voice, her head snapped up. Her eyes, wide and blind with terror, tried to focus on me. She didn't recognize me. She scrambled backward on the floor, crabbing away, her hands and feet slipping in the muck until her back hit the cold cinderblock wall. She was panting with a dry, rasping sound. No, she whimpered. No more, please. The rage that filled me was so pure, so hot, it burned away the shock. I didn't care about the smell. I didn't care about the filth. I crossed the basement in 3 strides. It's me, honey, I said, my voice cracking. It's Harrison. I'm home. I'm home. I reached out to her. She screamed, a thin, high shriek of pure animal fear. She threw up her frail arms to block her face as if she expected a blow. I'm not going to hurt you, I said, slowing my movements. I knelt in the dirt in front of her. Diane, it's Harrison. It's your husband. I touched her arm gently, ever so gently. Her skin was freezing. She stopped screaming. She just shook. Her whole body trembled violently. She slowly lowered her arms, her eyes staring at me, trying to see me in the dim light of the phone I'd set on the floor. Harrison? She breathed. The sound was like dry leaves scraping across pavement. It's me. It's us. The tears finally came, hot and furious. I've got you. I didn't wait for another word. I ripped off my own jacket and wrapped it around her frail shoulders. I slid my arms under her knees and back. She weighed nothing. She was a bundle of brittle bones, lighter than my granddaughter. I lifted her as if she were made of glass. She let out a small sigh, and her head fell against my chest. Her body went completely limp. She had used the last of her strength. I carried her upstairs, my own knees screaming in protest, but I didn't feel it. All I felt was white-hot fury. I carried her through the kitchen and into the living room, kicking open the door to the downstairs bathroom as I passed. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I placed her gently on the living room sofa, the nicest piece of furniture we owned. She looked so small, so broken, swallowed by the clean cushions. She was still shivering. "Stay here. I'm getting water. Don't move." I ran to the kitchen. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely fill a glass. I grabbed a straw and ran back to her. "Diane, drink." I commanded her with the softest voice. I put the straw to her cracked lips. She drank. She drank with a desperation that broke my heart. Again, she coughed and sputtered but didn't stop swallowing the water as if it were life itself, which it was. I refilled the glass 3 times before she finally turned her head away, exhausted. I ran to the bathroom and soaked a washcloth in warm water. I came back and started to gently wipe away the grime from her hands, from her matted hair. Her eyes never left my face. They were still wide, still full of a terrible, haunted knowledge. "I'm calling 911, I said, reaching for my phone. "No," she rasped, her hand shooting out and grabbing my wrist with surprising grip strength. "No, no police, no doctors, not yet. Diane, you're hurt. You're starving. You need." "He'll know," she whispered, her eyes darting toward the front door. "He'll find out. They'll come back." My blood ran cold again. "Who, Diane?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who did this to you?" I had to know. I had to have a name for my rage. I expected a stranger, a burglar, a monster who had broken in. Diane's eyes filled with fresh tears. But these weren't tears of fear, they were tears of a betrayal so deep she couldn't comprehend it. She struggled to speak. Her raw throat leaned forward as if afraid the walls were listening. "Heather," she choked out. The name hit me like a physical blow. I recoiled. "What?" "No, Diane, you're confused." Heather wouldn't. Heather insisted, she rasped, her grip on my wrist tightening. "She came the day after you left. She said she had a surprise for me in the basement." I couldn't breathe. My daughter, my only child. She locked me in. "Harrison," Diane sobbed, the words tearing out of her. I begged her. I screamed. She just stood on the other side of the door. She said she was sorry. She said Jason told her it was the only way. They needed this. She collapsed back against the cushions, the confession taking everything she had left. "Heather," I said the name, tasting like ash in my mouth. "And Jason." I looked around my quiet living room. The family photos on the mantel seemed to mock me. Heather smiling at her college graduation. Heather laughing on her wedding day, holding Jason's hand. My daughter, my little girl, had locked my wife in the basement and left her to die. I stood up. The grief for my mother was gone. The exhaustion from my trip was gone. All that remained was a cold, hard clarity. I wasn't going to call the police. Diane was right. This wasn't a job for them. This was a job for me. My first instinct was primal. My thumb went straight to the emergency call button on my phone. I wanted sirens. I wanted police officers kicking down their door. I wanted to see Heather and that useless husband of hers, Jason, dragged out of their comfortable bed in handcuffs. I wanted to scream, "Look! Look at what my daughter did. Look at the monster I raised." Diane was still crying into the cushion, a broken hiccuping sound. I looked at her, frail and shattered. Then I looked back at my phone and stopped. My thumb hovered away from the screen. Why? Because Diane's words were echoing in my head. Asterisk. Jason said she needed to do it. Asterisk. This wasn't a moment of madness. This wasn't a sudden psychotic break. This was a plan. And if they had a plan to lock her up, so be it. They had a plan for what they would do if they got caught. I could see it all unfolding in my mind. The police would arrive, a couple of young officers, maybe a tired old detective. They would see me, a 1-year-old man, just back from his mother's deathbed, exhausted and grieving. They would see Diane confused, malnourished, disoriented, maybe even hysterical. And then Heather and Jason would arrive, summoned by the sirens. Their faces would be a perfect mask of tearful concern. I could already hear Heather's voice dripping with fake panic. "Oh, thank God you're here, officer. We've been so worried. Dad just got back. He's exhausted. And Mom, oh, Mom." She would bury her face in her hands. The grieving, perfect daughter. Jason, that snake, would put his arm around her, the image of a strong, supportive husband. She's been losing touch with reality, officer, Jason would say, his voice heavy with false gravity. It's getting worse. She wanders. She gets confused. She sometimes locks herself in places. We've been telling Harrison for months that she needs to be evaluated. He's been in denial. They would look at Diane curled on the couch, looking like a wild creature, and they would believe them. What proof did I have? A broken padlock? I broke it. The word of a traumatized, half-starved woman against her two loving, concerned children? They might even say I did it, that I came home, found her confused, and fabricated this story. It would be their word against mine. And they were young, successful, and convincing. I was old, grieving, and furious. The police would file a report, Adult Protective Services would be called, and it would turn into a bureaucratic nightmare. Diane would be evaluated by a state-appointed doctor, which is exactly what they wanted. They would use my own call for help as proof of her instability. No. I slid the phone back into my pocket. The red-hot rage didn't disappear. It just changed shape. It cooled, hardened, sharpened into a razor's edge. This wasn't a police matter. Not yet. This was a war. And you don't call the authorities when you're in the middle of a war zone, and you don't even know the enemy's strength. First, I had to get Diane safe. She couldn't stay here. They might come back tonight. They had a key. They would see the broken lock. They would see me. They would know the game was up, and I had no idea what they were capable of. But I couldn't take her to a public hospital. An ER meant records. It meant administrators. It meant questions I wasn't ready to answer. It meant Heather and Jason would be notified as next of kin. They would find her in hours. I needed privacy. I needed discretion. I needed loyalty. And loyalty, I had learned a long time ago, can be bought and paid for. I walked into my small office, stepping over the pile of mail. I opened the bottom drawer of my old metal desk, a drawer that seemed stuck, but wasn't. I pressed a false panel at the back. It popped open, revealing a small compartment. Inside wasn't cash. It was a satellite phone. I held down the number 1 key. It rang twice with a strange digital trill. Yes, Mr. Cole. The voice was crisp, professional, and wide awake, even though it was nearly 9 p.m. This was Dr. Alexander Sterling. Sterling wasn't my family doctor. He wasn't on any HMO plan. He was my private physician, paid a significant retainer every year through a holding company I owned. He was paid for this exact moment, absolute, unquestioning discretion. He handled my times, real-time checkups, the ones I flew to Switzerland for. Not the simple blood pressure readings my general practitioner did. My children thought I was just a retired engineer with a modest pension. They had no idea. Alexander, I said, my voice low and steady. I have an emergency. A medical situation at my primary residence. The patient is my wife, Diane. What is the nature of the emergency? No surprise, no startle, just business. Severe dehydration, acute malnutrition, and extreme psychological trauma. She has been held captive. In my house. There was a half-second pause. Do I need to notify the authorities, or is this a private matter, Harrison? It is a private matter, Alexander. For now, it's just us. Understood? I am dispatching an unmarked private ambulance. My best team. They will be at your location in 20 minutes. Where are we taking her? I need your best facility. The most secure. The most private. I want her under a false name. No visitors. No calls. No records available to anyone. Not her family, especially not her family. I have a clinic in the Gold Coast area, he said immediately. It's a high-end recovery center. We will register her as Jane Porter, undergoing private post-operative care. I will handle her case personally. No one enters or leaves without your direct authorization. Good, I said. Send the team now. I hung up. I walked back to the living room. Diane had fallen into an exhausted, shallow sleep on the couch. Her breathing was still ragged. I knelt beside her and gently brushed the matted hair from her face. It's okay, honey, I whispered, my voice thick. I've got you. They thought I was just a tired old man. They thought she was just a frail old woman. They thought they could just brush us aside, lock us up, and erase us. They forgot who I am. They were about to get a reminder. Alexander said 20 minutes. I had 10. I walked back to the living room. Diane was breathing shallowly on the couch, eyes closed, lost in the merciful grip of exhaustion. I pulled a blanket over her, my hands shaking with a rage that was so cold it felt like ice in my veins. They had a plan. Asterisk, Jason said. She needed to do it. Asterisk, a plan that involved locking her in the dark to die. Why? The answer is always the same. It is always, asterisk, always times money. I left her side and walked down the hall to my office. It was the picture of a middle-class retired engineer, an old oak desk, a worn, comfortable leather chair, shelves lined with structural engineering textbooks from 40 years ago. On the wall was a simple framed painting of a covered bridge. Heather had painted that in high school. I stared at it. The girl who painted that wasn't the monster who had locked Diane in the basement. Or maybe she was. Maybe I had just refused to see it. I took the painting off the wall. Behind it was a small digital safe, the kind you buy at an office supply store for $200. It wasn't a real safe, it was a symbol. I had given Heather the combination years ago, for emergencies. I had told her, if anything happens to me and Diane, the combination is your birthday. I punched in her birthday. 0812. The light turned green, and the door clicked open. I pulled it open. It was empty. I kept $10,000 in cash in that safe, always for a real emergency, a tree falling on the house, a sudden medical bill, the kind of things normal people worry about. Every last bill was gone. She had known exactly where to look. My breath hitched, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was just the beginning. Cash was easy. The real question was the bank. I sat down at my old desktop computer. The machine sprang to life slowly, agonizingly. I opened the browser and typed in the address of our local bank. The joint account, the one I shared with Diane, the account my pension was paid into, the account Heather knew about, the one she sometimes helped me manage online when she visited. Clicking the mouse with exaggerated patience, as if explaining technology to a child. Look, Dad, it's easy, she would say. I typed in the password, Heather 1984 *. I had set it as a joke on her 30th birthday. It never occurred to me to change it. Why would I? She was my daughter. The page loaded. Checking account balance, $1,423. I clicked on the savings account tab, the one we had spent 40 years building, the one I had always called our rainy day fund. The money I told Heather was everything we had, our life savings. Balance, $0. My vision blurred. I gripped the sides of the desk. I wasn't breathing. I clicked my hand, moving like a separate entity on the transaction history. It was a massacre. The day after I left for Canada. Online transfer, $5,000. 2 days later, counter withdrawal, $10,000. 3 days after that, counter withdrawal, $15,000. 1 week ago, a check cashed, $50,000. Total, $80,000 gone. I clicked on the scanned image of the $50,000 check. The bank had paid it. It was made out to Lawson Developments. And the signature was a pathetic, childish scrawl of my name, Harrison Cole. It looked like a third grader had traced it through wax paper. It was a forgery so bad it was insulting. They didn't even try to make it look real. Why would they? They thought Diane was locked in the basement, dead or dying. They thought I was across the continent, grieving. They thought by the time I got back, the money would be gone, the house would be sold, and they would be ghosts. I leaned back in my squeaky office chair. I put my head in my hands. But I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I was processing a single, terrible, pathetic fact. The safe, $10,000. The bank account, $80,000. Total, $90,000. They had locked a human being in a concrete box. They had left my wife to starve, to die of thirst, to rot in her own filth, for $90,000. A cold, bitter laugh escaped my lips. It was a dry, ugly sound in the quiet room. The $90,000. My daughter Heather. The girl I sent to the best university. The girl whose European backpacking trip I funded. Whose $500,000 wedding I paid for. She thought that was the sum total of my life. She thought she was committing the perfect crime for a retiree's modest savings. What she didn't know, what she had never bothered to ask, what my simple, modest life in this small brick house had hidden from her greedy, Stupid eyes, is that $90,000 is less than the tax I paid on my Swiss investments last quarter. It is less than the dividend payment I receive every month from the holding company that bears my name. To me, it is nothing. It is pocket change. They tried to murder my wife for pocket change. The sheer, idiotic cheapness of their evil was what finally broke me. The pettiness of their betrayal. They weren't masterminds. They were just small, pathetic. I thought of Jason with his leased BMW and his fake Rolex, of Heather with her desperation to look rich. They were children playing a deadly game for Monopoly money, and they didn't even realize the Times Real Times Bank was sitting right in front of them, the man they called Dad. My rage was now pure. It was clean. It was focused. They had mistaken my quiet life for weakness. They had mistaken my generosity for senility. They had mistaken my love for stupidity. They were about to learn the difference between a retired engineer and a sleeping giant. I closed the browser, cleared the history, stood up, and walked back to the living room just as I heard the faint, discreet sound of a vehicle pulling into my driveway. Alexander's team was here. I looked at Diane, still sleeping. "It's okay, honey," I whispered. "The doctors are here. You're safe now." I went to the door. The investigation was over. The war had just begun. Exactly 20 minutes later, a long black transport van with heavily tinted windows rolled silently into my driveway. No sirens, no lights, no hospital logos. It looked like a vehicle for diplomatic transport. Two men in simple dark blue uniforms got out of the side door, carrying a collapsible stretcher. They moved with a quiet, practiced efficiency that spoke of high-cost private care. Dr. Alexander Sterling followed, carrying a black leather medical bag. Sterling is a tall, thin man with a perpetually serious expression. He looks more like a high-powered attorney than a doctor, which is precisely why I hired him. He walked past me into the house, his eyes landing immediately on Diane. He didn't waste a second on greetings. He knelt by the sofa. The two medics stood silently by the door, waiting for his command. "Diane," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "My name is Dr. Sterling. I'm a friend of Harrison's. I'm going to take care of you." He snapped on a pair of latex gloves and began his assessment. It was fast, his hands sure and professional. He took her blood pressure. It was dangerously low. He shined a light in her eyes. They reacted slowly. He pinched the skin on the back of her hand gently. It stayed tented, a sign of extreme dehydration. I stood by the fireplace, watching, my arms crossed so tight my muscles ached. I felt a deep, terrible helplessness. I could command empires of money from my office, but I couldn't undo the last 14 days of suffering my wife had endured. Sterling looked up at me, his face grim. "She's in bad shape, Harrison. Acute renal stress from the dehydration. Severe malnutrition. Hypothermia has set in. The concrete floor was leaching her body heat. Her electrolytes are completely unbalanced." He listened to her heart with his stethoscope, and her pulse is weak. "She is in the advanced stages of starvation." He paused, then added in a lower voice, "Whoever did this wasn't just trying to scare her. They were timing it. They knew exactly how long a human body can last in these conditions. Another 24, maybe 48 hours, and she would have saved you the expense of a private ambulance." The clinical coldness of his observation confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a warning. It was attempted murder. "Can you move her?" I asked, my voice a low growl. "Yes. She needs immediate IV fluids and monitoring. My team is ready." He nodded to the medics. "Let's stabilize her for transport." The two men moved in. They were gentle, but fast. They slid a board under her. They hooked up a portable IV line they had brought and wrapped her in thermal blankets. Diane moaned as they moved her, a small, frightened sound that tore at my guts. "It's okay, honey," I said, moving to her side, touching her matted hair. "You're safe now. These men are taking you to a good place, a private place. I'll be right behind you." Her eyes fluttered open and tried to focus on me. "Heather," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Shh, shh," I said. "Don't talk. Don't think about her. Don't think about anything. Just rest. I will handle it." She relaxed slightly and let her eyes close. She trusted me. The weight of that trust settled onto my shoulders like a block of granite. "Where to, Mr. Cole?" Sterling asked, though he already knew the protocol. "The Gold Coast Clinic," I said, "the executive wing. Her name is Jane Porter, No visitors, no calls. No one, not even the hospital administration, knows her real name. Only you and me. Understood, Sterling said. He turned to his team. You have your orders. Move her. The medics carried her efficiently out the front door and loaded her into the back of the black van. The doors closed with a solid, dull thud. I was about to follow them when Sterling put a hand on my arm. Harrison, one last thing. I turned. He was holding something in his gloved hand, a small, crumpled piece of paper. My lead medic found this when he was checking her vitals, Sterling said. It was clenched in her right hand. She wouldn't let go of it even in her delirious state. He had to gently pry it from her fingers so he could place the pulse oximeter. He thought it might be important. I stared at the balled-up paper. It was stained and damp. I took it from him. My hands were shaking, but not from age, from rage. Thank you, Alexander, I said. Send me the bill, and keep me updated every hour. Of course. And Harrison. Be careful. People who would do this to her, they aren't rational. Oh, they are perfectly rational, I said, my voice cold. They just made a very poor calculation. He nodded, climbed into the front seat of the van, and it pulled away, disappearing silently into the night. I was alone again in the dark, silent house. The smell from the basement still wafted in the air. I closed the front door, bolted it, and walked into the kitchen. My eyes fixed on the crumpled piece of paper in my hand. I smoothed it out on the kitchen counter. My blood stopped moving. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a note. It was a real estate flyer. A glossy printout from a local agency. I saw a photo of my own front porch, my own flower beds, my own oak tree. It was a listing for Times My House asterisk. I stared at the details. Asterisk 3-bedroom, 2-bath, large lot, sold as is, asterisk, and then I saw the 2 words at the bottom printed in bold red letters that seemed to scream at me from the page. Asterisk, asterisk, sale pending. Asterisk, asterisk, they weren't just after the $90,000. That was just the appetizer. This the house, the place I had lived for 40 years. The only real asset they thought I had. This was the main course. They had locked my wife in the basement to let her die so she couldn't stop them from selling her house right out from under her. I stood there in the silent kitchen for a long time, with the crumpled real estate flyer clenched in my fist. Asterisk, sale pending. Asterisk, the words seemed to mock me. They weren't just thieves, they were liquidators. They were erasing us. My mind was a chaotic storm of images. Diane's skeletal face, the empty safe, the drained bank accounts, and now this final, insulting proof of their plan. They weren't just stealing our savings. They were stealing our home, our memories, the foundation of our lives. The kettle on the stove began to whistle. I didn't even remember filling it. Mechanically, I poured the boiling water over a tea bag, my hands moving on autopilot. I needed to think. I needed to be calm. The man who had sat by his mother's bedside for 2 weeks was gone, replaced by someone else. A man I hadn't been in a long time, a man who built things, and who understood exactly how to tear them down. I sat at the kitchen table where Diane and I had eaten meals for a quarter of a century. I let the silence settle. I let the cold fury sharpen my mind to a single, focused point. They thought I was a grieving, tired, simple old man. Fine. That is exactly who I would be. As if summoned, my smartphone buzzed on the counter. I looked at the screen. The name glowed. Asterisk, asterisk, Heather asterisk, asterisk. I let it ring once, twice, a third time, letting the vibration rattle against the granite. I needed to shift my breathing, to let the exhaustion I had felt on the plane settle back over me, to bury the ice in my veins under a blanket of grief. I took a slow, shaky breath and picked up the phone. Dad. Her voice was a perfect symphony of manufactured concern. It was bright, sharp, and trembling on the edge of tears. Oh, Daddy, thank God. I've been calling and calling. Your phone kept going to voicemail. How was the flight? Are you okay? How? How is Grandma? I let a long sigh be my answer. She's gone, honey. I made my voice thick, broken. She passed away 2 days ago. I'm just tired, Heather. So tired. Oh, Daddy, no. Her sob sounded practiced, like something she'd heard in a movie. I'm so sorry. You sound awful. Are you home? Are you safe? I'm home. I said, rubbing my temples. I just got in. The house is dark, honey. The light seems to be out in the living room. And where's Diane? I thought she would be here to pick me up. Her car is in the garage. I had cast the bait. Now I waited for the lie. There was a pause, just a fraction of a second, the sound of a sharp intake of breath, the sound of her mind searching for the script. Oh my gosh, that's right, her voice exclaimed, suddenly too loud, too cheerful. With everything going on with Grandma, I completely forgot to text you. Forgot what, Heather? Dad, it was crazy. Right after you left for Canada, Diane got a call. Her sister Mary, you know, the one in Florida. She had a terrible fall. She broke her hip. It was really bad. Diane had to fly down immediately to take care of her. I stared at the white kitchen wall. Asterisk, asterisk, Diane has no sister. Asterisk, asterisk, her only sibling was a brother in Chicago, a man we had just had dinner with last month. Heather couldn't even be bothered to create a convincing lie. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. It was insulting. Florida, I said, playing the part of the confused, grieving husband. She didn't say a word. Mary? Right, I guess. I forgot about Mary. Exactly. Heather jumped on my confusion. It was all so sudden. She felt terrible leaving. But you know Diane, she has a heart of gold. She said to tell you she loves you, that she's so sorry about Grandma, and that she'll be back as soon as Mary is stable. She said she'd call you tonight. A perfect, tidy package. Diane was gone, but not in a way that raised alarms, simply unavailable. Out of state. Okay, honey, I said, letting my voice trail off. I guess I'm alone. Then I'll come over tomorrow, Dad. I promise. I'll bring you some food, she said, her voice dripping pity. But listen, Dad, I know this is the worst possible time, the absolute worst, with Grandma passing, and you being so tired. Here comes the second act. What is it, Heather? I'm really not in the mood for any. Jason and I are in a bind. A really big one. A bind? What kind of bind? I said, injecting a note of paternal irritation. It's this investment, Dad. A property. A foreclosure. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We can flip it and honestly, Dad, it would set us up for life. It would mean we could finally take care of you and Diane, you know, like you deserve. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. She was talking about flipping times my own house, asterisk. Heather, I'm too tired for this. I don't know anything about flipping properties. I know, Dad, she said, her voice becoming urgent, desperate. You don't have to do anything. It's all set up. But our partner. The money fell through at the last second. The bank needs the down payment by tomorrow afternoon or we lose everything. We lose the deposit, everything. I stayed silent. I let the silence stretch, filling it with my imaginary exhaustion. We need a loan, Dad, she finally whispered, as if ashamed. A very short-term loan, just until the bank paperwork clears. We'll pay you back in a month with interest. I swear on my life. I let out another long sigh. How much, Heather? Another pause. She was bracing herself. It's $80,000. The exact amount down to the penny, the $80,000 she had already stolen. My mind was crystal clear. This was the test. She wasn't just asking for a loan. She was checking if I had looked at the accounts. If I said, I don't have it, or, oh, those are my life savings, they're gone, she would know I had discovered the theft. Her plan would change. They would run, or worse. But if I said times yes, asterisk, if I acted like the clueless, grieving old man who still had his nest egg, they would think I was still the fool. They would think they were still in control. I had to play the role. $80,000? I stuttered, my voice full of shock. Lord, Heather, that's everything. That's the entire savings account. That's mine and Diane's future. I know, she cried, and I could hear the predatory eagerness in her voice now. She was reeling me in. I know, Dad, but it's a sure thing. I promise we'll pay it back double. This will fix everything for us. Please, Dad. Please. I stayed silent for 10 full seconds. I let her hang there. Okay, I whispered, as if the word were dragged out of me against my will. Okay, honey. You're my only daughter. If it's that important. Okay. Oh my God. Dad, thank you. Thank you. But I can't do it online. I said, adding my own little thread to the web. I don't remember the passwords. Not since, you know. I'll have to go to the bank tomorrow. You'll have to come with me. You'll have to help me talk to the teller, tell them I need to withdraw it all. Of course, Dad. Yes, whatever you need. I'll pick you up at 10 a.m. We'll go together. Okay, honey, I said, my voice fading. I need to sleep now. I'm so tired. I love you, Dad. You won't regret this. I'm sure I won't, Heather, I said, and hung up the phone. I sat in the dark kitchen. The call was over. She had lied about Diane. She had feigned sympathy for my mother. And then, with breathtaking cruelty, she had tried to make me go to the bank to voluntarily withdraw the money she had already stolen. She was trying to make me an accessory to covering up her own crime. My hand clenched into a fist on the table. She wanted to meet me at the bank at 10 a.m. Fine. That gives me 12 hours to prepare the reception. I didn't sleep. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. I sat at my kitchen table, the house silent and cold, the crumpled real estate flyer under the single kitchen light. Asterisk, sale pending. Asterisk, the words seemed to pulse in the quiet. My daughter was selling my house while her accomplices left my wife to die on the concrete floor beneath me. At 5 a.m., I washed my face. The cold water against my skin. I didn't change out of the wrinkled clothes I had traveled in. I was still Harrison Cole, the grieving widower, the tired old man. I walked out my front door, ignoring the garage. I walked the 3 blocks to the subway station in the pre-dawn chill. The city was still gray and quiet. I blended in with the first wave of morning commuters. Just another invisible old black man to the world. That was how I had designed it. I got off at the downtown station. I walked past the office workers grabbing coffee. None gave me a second glance. I walked into the lobby of the Centrum Tower, a tall, imposing spire of black glass and steel. I didn't go to the main elevators where the crowds were already forming. I walked to a private bank of elevators in the back marked Times Penthouse Access, keycard only asterisk. I pressed my thumb against the biometric scanner. It glowed green. The brushed steel doors slid open silently. I stepped inside. There was only one button, asterisk asterisk PH asterisk asterisk. The elevator ascended without a sound, a smooth, rapid climb separating me from the world below. This was my real life. The life Heather, in her greedy, pathetic scramble for $90,000, had never bothered to look for. She and Jason saw the old brick house in the neighborhood and thought they saw the whole picture. They saw the flannel shirts and the 10-year-old sedan and thought they understood my worth. They never asked why I retired at 55. They never asked what I did with the patents from my structural engineering firm. They only saw the simple life I showed them and assumed it was the only one I had. The elevator doors opened to the quiet, expansive lobby of asterisk asterisk Cole Holdings asterisk asterisk. It was 6:30 a.m. The walls were Italian marble, not the peeling paint of my kitchen. The air smelled faintly of clean leather and old wood, not the stench of the basement. Here, I wasn't Harrison Cole, the retired engineer. Here, I was Mr. Cole, the founder, the silent chairman, the man who had sold his engineering firm for a sum that still staggered me and had spent the next 30 years quietly and methodically turning that fortune into a private global investment empire. My daughter thought I was worth a house and $90,000. The truth was, I owned the bank that held her mortgage. He was already there. Asterisk asterisk Elias Thorne asterisk asterisk. Thorne wasn't just my lawyer. He was the CEO of my family office, the man who had managed my estate for 3 decades. He was the only man on earth, besides Alexander, who knew the whole truth. He was waiting in my personal office, standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city as it woke up. He was a sharp, impeccably dressed man who had never lost a fight. He turned as I walked in. He offered no condolences for my mother. We were past pleasantries. "Harrison," he said, his voice grave. "Alexander's report came in an hour ago. Diane is stable, but the medical findings are disturbing. Malnutrition, acute renal stress. This wasn't a short-term event." "They're not as disturbing as this," I said. My voice was different in this room, colder, clearer. I tossed the crumpled real estate flyer onto his massive mahogany desk, and this I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshot of my emptied local bank account. Thorne looked at the $80,000 figure, then the real estate flyer. He didn't look surprised, he looked insulted. $90,000, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. She locked my wife in a basement for $90,000. Thorne turned to his terminal. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He wasn't a neighborhood lawyer. He was a shark, and this was his ocean. This is ambitious, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. And sloppy. I'm accessing county records now. I sat in the black leather chair across from him, the same chair where I had signed deals worth tens of millions. Now I was here to discuss the petty theft of $80,000. The absurdity of it was suffocating. Here it is, Thorne said, swiveling the large monitor to face me. A quitclaim deed filed 3 days after you left for Canada. Signed by you and Diane Cole. Notarized. Forgery, I stated. Of course, Thorne agreed. An outrageously bad one, but good enough to fool a busy county clerk. They used this fraudulent deed to take legal possession. Then they immediately listed the property with a discount broker. They wanted a quick cash sale. Who is the buyer? I asked. Thorne typed again. The buyer is a shell corporation registered 2 months ago to a P.O. box in the next township. *** Lawson Developments ***. Jason, I said. He's buying your house from himself, Thorne confirmed. He used the fraudulent deed as collateral to get a hard money loan. He planned to use the stolen $90,000 as his down payment to secure the loan, then sell the house for its full market value of $750,000. It's desperate, it's stupid, but it's fast. When does it close? I asked. That's the rub, Thorne said, eyes hard. It is scheduled to close tomorrow. By the time you were supposed to return from Canada, the house would have been legally his. And Diane? Well, they needed her gone. They locked her in this basement so she couldn't answer the phone when the title company or the notary called to confirm the sale. The plan was complete. Steal the cash, steal the house. And if Diane died in the process, that was just a bonus. It tied up loose ends. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was rising over the city, a beautiful bloody orange. I felt nothing but a cold, refined rage. Stop it, I commanded. Kill the sale. Call the banks, the county. Freeze everything. Thorne nodded, his hand already on his phone. That's the easy part. I'll have a lien on the property and a full investigation launched within the hour. This sale is dead. I looked down at the city streets, beginning to fill with cars. I thought of Heather, my little girl, waking up, getting dressed, believing she was just hours away from winning, believing she was about to help her confused old father at the bank. Wait, I said, turning back to him. Thorne paused, hand hovering over the receiver. Harrison? Do not stop the sale. Thorne frowned. What do you mean no? If you let it close, they will own the title. It will be a legal nightmare to claw back, even with the fraud. I don't care about the house, I said. It's just brick and wood. It's tainted. Let them have it. Thorne looked at me. A slow, sharp smile spread across his face. He understood. You're not trying to save the house, are you? No, I said. You're setting a trap. They think they stole $80,000, I said. They think they are about to steal a $750,000 house. They are arrogant, they are stupid, and they are overconfident. Heather is picking me up at 10 a.m. to go to the bank. She thinks she's playing me. I walked back to the desk. I don't want you to stop this, Elias. I want you to finance times it. I want you to make sure that loan goes through smoothly. I want you to make sure that shell company gets the title. I want them to think they have won. I want them to hold the prize in their greedy, filthy hands. And then? Thorne asked, leaning back in his chair, fully engaged now. And then, I said, feeling the ice settle permanently in my heart, I'm going to take everything else. And I mean everything. Thorne nodded, a grim satisfaction in his eyes. He understood the strategy. Asterisk, you want to play in the deep end? Asterisk, he tapped the real estate flyer. Asterisk, let's show them what sharks look like. Asterisk, while you are at the bank, I will be in a different part of the ocean. I wanted to know why they were so desperate. I'll find out. He reached for his phone. I have a private investigator on permanent retainer. He's expensive, He's intrusive, and he's worth every damn penny. I'm authorizing his executive background package on Jason Lawson. I want to know what he had for breakfast and who paid for it. Go home, Harrison. Play your role. By the time you call me this afternoon, I will have answers. I left the penthouse. The ride down in the silent elevator felt like a descent back into a lie. I walked out of the gleaming lobby, invisible again. Just another old man walking to the subway station. When I got back to my neighborhood, the sun was up. The world looked normal. A neighbor waved. I waved back. I walked into my house. The smell of the basement was still there, faint and sour. I closed the broken basement door, went to my office, and sat at my desk staring at the empty safe. I had 3 hours until Heather arrived. I thought about the man my daughter had married, Jason Lawson. He was a white man from a good family, or so he claimed. Worked in investment banking. He was handsome, smooth, always had the right compliment. He wore expensive suits and drove a car I knew he couldn't afford on his salary. I had never liked him. I sensed a coldness in him, an ambition that was hollow. But Heather adored him. She was dazzled by him. And I, blinded by my love for my daughter, had paid for the wedding a lavish, flashy affair that cost more than my first house. I had given them the down payment for their home in a gated community. I had done it all in the hope of buying her happiness. I had been a fool. I looked at the clock. 9 a.m. Thorne was a fast worker. My personal cell phone, the one no one knew about, buzzed on the desk. A secure message from Thorne. I opened it. There was a single attachment, a PDF file. I clicked it. The report was 14 pages long. I started reading. By the time I finished, the cup of coffee in my hand was stone cold, and the man I was had been replaced by a stranger. Jason Lawson wasn't an investment banker. According to Thorne's investigator, Jason Lawson had been fired from his junior analyst position 2 years ago, fired for embezzlement. He had been stealing from client accounts. The firm had been desperate to avoid a scandal, so they had buried it, forcing him to sign an NDA and letting him go. For 2 years, he had been unemployed. The expensive suits, the leased BMW, the constant talk of big deals and client meetings, it was all a performance, a sham. Where did the money come from? I scrolled down. He had been living off Heather, living off the credit cards Times had given her. The cards I paid off every month without looking at the statements, believing I was funding her side business, her shopping, her lunches with friends. I was a fool. I had been funding the very snake who was now trying to steal my house. I kept reading. It got worse. He wasn't just broke, he was being hunted. Jason Lawson was a compulsive gambler. The investigator had found online accounts, wire transfers to offshore bookies, withdrawals from payday lenders. The investment he had told Heather about, the one that fell through, wasn't a property. It was a sports bet, a college football game. He had bet everything he had and everything he didn't have, and he lost. The report listed his current outstanding debts. The number made me cold. $214,000 ***. This wasn't debt to a bank, to a polite collections department. This was debt to men who break legs, men who don't care about an NDA. The investigator had found text messages. They had given Jason a deadline. The deadline was tomorrow. Now I understood the desperation, the sloppy forgery, the incredible cruelty of locking Diane in the basement. It wasn't just greed. It was pure animal panic. He needed my $90,000 and the sale of the house to pay off his debts and save his own skin. I closed the file, my heart hammering with a sick realization. This was the motive. A cornered, desperate rat willing to do anything to escape the trap. But Thorne's investigator was thorough. There was one last document. I opened it. It was a digital copy of an insurance application. I stared at it, not understanding at first. It was a life insurance policy, a new one, taken out only 6 weeks ago, right after I told the family I was going to Canada to care for my mother. It wasn't a policy on his own life. It wasn't on Heather's. It was a term life policy for $500,000 on Diane Cole my wife. The beneficiary was listed as his company, the shell company, Lawson Developments, I set the phone down on the desk. I looked at the broken basement door. now jammed shut. The $90,000 wasn't the plan. The house wasn't the plan. Those were just bonuses. The plan was times this asterisk. The plan was the $500,000 insurance payout. They hadn't locked Diane in the basement to stop her from interfering with the sale. They had locked her in the basement times to die asterisk. A tragic, terrible accident. The confused elderly wife of a grieving husband who was out of the country somehow tragically locked herself in the basement, passed away from dehydration. A horrible, sad, accidental death. Who would question it? I would be grieving my mother. Heather would be the grieving daughter-in-law. Jason would be the supportive husband. They would have the house, the cash, and a check for $500,000. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at my quiet suburban street. My daughter, my son-in-law. They weren't just thieves. They were murderers. And they were about to walk through my front door in less than an hour. I didn't have to wait long. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I looked at the crumpled real estate flyer. Asterisk, sale pending. Asterisk, I had smoothed it out. And the paper was still damp in places. I didn't know if it was from the basement dampness or from Diane's hand sweating as she clutched it. I thought about the timeline. They had 14 days. 14 days. While I was away holding my mother's hand. 14 days for Diane to slowly waste away. 14 days for the house sale to close. They had timed it perfectly. They must have been tracking the sales progress every day, waiting for the money to clear. But Thorne's investigator was better. My satellite phone, the one hidden in my desk drawer, vibrated once. A secure text from Thorne. It was 9:48 a.m. The message was simple. Asterisk, Phase 1 complete. Title company has been served with a court order for fraud. Hard money lender notified collateral is based on forged deed. Sale is dead in the water. Brace for impact. Asterisk, I put the secret phone away. I placed my old, standard flip phone on the kitchen table in front of me. I looked at the broken basement door wedged shut. I waited. The impact came at 9:52 a.m. My phone rang, shrill in the quiet house. I looked at the caller ID. It wasn't Heather. It was asterisk, asterisk, Jason, asterisk, asterisk. This was good. Heather would be emotionally manipulative. She would try to cry her way out of this. Jason. Jason was just a thug. And thugs, when cornered, don't cry, they threaten. I let it ring 3 times. Just enough time for his panic to spike. Then I took a long, shaky breath, channeling the grieving 71-year-old man they thought I was. I answered. Hello? My voice was thick, groggy. Harrison, what the hell is going on? His voice was a sharp bark. No, Dad. No, Harrison. Not even a hello. Just pure, undiluted panic. Jason, I said. My voice trembled with confusion. Jason, what's wrong? What time is it? I'm waiting for Heather. She's supposed to pick me up. We're going to the bank. Forget the bank, he screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. The bank doesn't matter. The house, Harrison, the house, I said, letting a note of fear enter my voice. What about the house? Did a pipe burst? The light is out in the living room. Don't play dumb with me, old man, he roared. The title company. They just called me. They said the sale is frozen. They said you filed a fraud complaint. You ruined it. You just cost us everything. I let a long, painful stretch of silence hang. I let him hear my breathing sharp, erratic, like an old man on the verge of a heart attack. Sale. I finally whispered. What? What sale, Jason? You're not making any sense. I just got home. My mother just died. I'm so tired. I don't know what you're talking about. A fraud complaint? I haven't spoken to anyone but Heather. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. He had said too much. He had revealed his hand. The investment, Harrison, he said, trying to dial back his rage. His voice now slick and fake. The property Heather told you about. We were just using your house as collateral to secure the financing. You must have gotten some automated alert, some mail. You must have done something. Collateral? I made my voice crack, full of disbelief and terror. You used my house, Jason? Diane and I, we own this house outright. You can't just use it. Is that legal? Oh God, is that why the bank account is empty? Did you do that too? Did you steal our savings, Jason? I had given him the narrative. I had given him the lie he wanted to hear, that I was just a confused old man who had discovered the stolen $80,000 and accidentally ruined his real plan. He took the bait immediately. Listen, Harrison, it's complicated, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. The bank account was just to secure the loan. It's all connected. It's a simple misunderstanding. A stupid clerical error. We can fix this. You just have to call the title company. Tell them everything is fine. Tell them you approve the sale. Approve the sale? I repeated, my voice rising in manufactured hysteria. Approve the sale of my house, Jason? I feel sick. I don't understand any of this. This is too much. My mother, Diane, is gone. She's in Florida. And now this. I know, he said, voice dripping fake patience. We're sorry about your mom. But this is urgent, Harrison. This is life or death. You need to call them. You need to call them now. No, I said, voice shaking. No, I'm not calling anyone. I don't understand. I don't know who to trust. You guys need to come here. Both of you. You and Heather need to come to the house right now. What? We're busy trying to fix this. Now! I yelled, a genuine roar of rage that I disguised as the panic of a cornered old man. Come here right now and explain to my face what you did with my money and what you are doing with my house. If you don't, I'm going to. I'm going to call the police. I think I've been robbed. They stole my life savings. That was the magic word. Asterisk, police asterisk. No. Jason's voice was sharp. Don't do that. Don't call anyone. It's just a misunderstanding, I promise. We're on our way. We'll be there in 15 minutes. Just stay there. Don't touch anything. We'll explain everything. He hung up abruptly. I set the phone back on the table. The silence of the house returned, but it was different. Now it wasn't the silence of absence. It was the silence of a web vibrating, waiting for the fly. I checked the clock. 9:58 a.m. They would be here soon, arrogant, desperate, and completely unaware they were walking straight into the lion's den. I wasn't the grieving son anymore. I wasn't the confused husband. I was the bait, and the trap was set. The phone weighed heavy in my hand. 15 minutes. That's what he said. They would be here in 15 minutes, driving to my house with their sharp, unified minds, ready to handle the confused old man. They would come prepared with fake sympathy and practiced lies, ready to corner me in my own living room. I looked at the broken padlock on the floor. I looked at the dark stain on the sofa where Diane had lain. Not here. I wouldn't have this fight here. This house was a crime scene. It was a tomb. It was their time's turf. I needed sterile ground. I needed advantage. I needed my time's territory. I grabbed my old, simple flip phone and texted Heather. My fingers had to fake a tremble, adding typos and correcting them, making me seem pathetic and flustered. Asterisk, Heather. I can't be at the house. The light is still out in the living room, and it feels too empty. Too many memories. Diane is gone. Mom is gone. It's too much. I'm scared. Asterisk, I let that settle for a moment. Then I sent another. Asterisk, I'm going to the bank. The big one. The main branch downtown. Centrum Tower. I need to talk to the manager anyway about the account. Please, honey, meet me there in an hour. 10:30. Please, I don't know what to do. Asterisk, I had made myself weak. I had made myself a victim. I had given her a task, a new problem to solve. They would love that. It would restore their sense of control. Her reply came almost instantly. Asterisk, okay, Dad. 10:30. Don't worry. Just sit in the lobby. Don't talk to anyone. We'll handle everything. Asterisk, we'll handle everything. The arrogance of it. I put the phone in my pocket. I walked out my front door. I didn't take Diane's car. I didn't call a cab either. I walked the 3 blocks to the subway station in the morning light, looking like just another brown-skinned old man in a wrinkled shirt, invisible to the world. It was the world's best camouflage. I got off at the financial district station, surrounded by the morning crowd. I entered the imposing, polished granite lobby of the Centrum Tower. I ignored the main elevators, the ones crowded with office workers. I walked to a private, unmarked elevator in the back of the lobby, next to a discreet sign that read Times Penthouse, Authorized Access Only *. I pressed my thumb against the black biometric scanner. It beeped softly and glowed green. The stainless steel door slid open with a whisper. I stepped inside. The only button was a simple letter ****P****. The elevator rose fast and silent, lifting me above the city. This was my real world. The life my daughter, in her pathetic scramble for $90,000, hadn't even thought to look for. The doors opened to the lobby of **** Coal Holdings ****. The floors were black marble. The walls were glass. The air was still. It was 10:30 a.m. exactly. He was already there. Elias Thorne. Thorne wasn't just my lawyer. He was the CEO of my private family office, the man who managed the fortune I built on the patents I sold 30 years ago. He was the only man on earth who knew where every penny was. He was standing by the window, looking out at the city. He turned when I walked in. He was, as always, impeccable in a dark suit. "Harrison," he said, his voice somber. "Doctor, Sterling's report came in an hour ago. Diane is stable. But the medical findings are disturbing. Acute malnutrition. Renal stress. This wasn't a mistake. This was an execution plan. They're on their way here," I said. My voice was different in this room, colder, harder. "Here?" Thorne raised an eyebrow. "They think they're coming to the commercial bank on the 10th floor to handle me. They think I'm a grieving, confused old man who accidentally discovered the stolen $80,000 and ruined their real plan." I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The view was magnificent. I owned this view. "What they don't know," I said, "is that I have your investigator's report. The one you sent me this morning." Thorne nodded. It was revealing. It was definitive. I corrected him. I thought about the email I had read at 5 a.m. Jason Lawson, fired for embezzlement 2 years ago. Not an investment banker, but a compulsive gambler, indebted to men who don't send polite letters. And the final, disgusting attachment, the life insurance policy, $500,000. In Diane's name. "They weren't just after the house, Elias," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "The house was just a bonus. The $90,000 was just seed money. They were after the insurance payout." "Insurance requires a death certificate," Thorne said, "and a 14-day fast in a cold basement provides one," I replied. "A tragic accident. A confused old woman, a grieving husband out of the country. It's almost a perfect crime." "Almost," Thorne agreed. "Your daughter is very overdue. She is about to have a very bad day." "I'm not dressed for a bad day," I said, looking down at my wrinkled clothes. Thorne allowed himself a slight smile. "I anticipated that. Your suite is ready. Your tailor delivered 3 options yesterday as you requested." I walked into the private apartment I kept next to the office. I took off the clothes of Harrison, the tired old man. I showered, I shaved. I put on a charcoal gray bespoke suit, a crisp white shirt, a silk tie the color of old blood. I put on shoes that cost more than the car in my garage. When I looked in the mirror, old Harrison was gone. Mr. Cole stared back. His eyes were cold. I walked out again. Thorne was at his desk. 2 men were standing by the elevator doors. They were large. They wore suits that didn't hide their profession. My private security. "It is 10:48 a.m., Thorne said. "They just cleared lobby security. They are agitated. They think they are going to the manager's office on the 10th floor?" "Good," I said. "Redirect them. Tell the front desk my investment meeting has moved to the chairman's office." "As you wish," Thorne smiled. "I'll have them sent straight up." I walked back to the window, turning my back to the door, and clasped my hands behind me. I listened to the silence. I listened to the chime of the private elevator. I heard the steel doors slide open. I heard their footsteps on the marble floor. Then I heard them stop dead. The silence that followed was heavy. They expected cubicles, fluorescent lights, and a bank manager. They were standing in a space larger than my entire house, surrounded by original art, looking at a wall of glass that dominated the entire Capitol. What the hell is this? I heard Jason mutter. Dad? Heather's voice was small, confused. Dad, are you here? She said to the empty receptionist desk. I turned slowly. The expression on their faces was worth $1 million. Heather's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes darted from my face to the suit I was wearing, to Elias Thorne standing impassively at his desk, to the two very large, very serious men standing guard by the elevator. Jason's reaction was different. It wasn't confusion. It was pure, undiluted fear. He was a small-time grifter who had just stumbled into a room where he didn't belong. He was a rat who had just realized the pantry he was raiding was owned by a lion. He recognized the symbols of true power instantly, and he knew with a sickening certainty that he was hopelessly, fatally out of his league. Dad, Heather stammered, what is this place? Who are these people? Why? Why are you dressed like that? Jason grabbed her arm, knuckles white. Heather, shut up, he hissed. His eyes were scanning the room, calculating, panicking. This, I said, my voice quiet and low, resonating in the vast, silent room, is Cole Holdings. It is my office. Please, sit down. We have much to discuss. They didn't sit. Heather looked like she'd seen a ghost, her hands gripping her purse strap. Jason, on the other hand, was trying to puff himself up. He was a small man trying to look big, adjusting his suit jacket, trying to meet my gaze with a defiance that was clearly failing. His eyes were wet with sweat. Dad, Heather stuttered. What is this? Is this a joke? Who are these men? I don't understand. We're here to help you. Help me, I repeated. The words fell dead in the air. Is that what you call it? Helping? Jason stepped forward slightly, putting himself in front of Heather. A pathetic attempt at protection. Harrison, look, we don't know what kind of game you're playing. You call us in a panic, you sound confused, and now this. This circus? We're worried about you. We came here to take you to the bank like you asked. The bank, I said. Yes. We will get to the bank. But first, let's talk about why times we need to go to the bank. Let's talk about the house, Jason. Heather flinched. The house, Dad. That's what Jason was trying to explain. It's just a misunderstanding. The bank must have made a mistake. A mistake, I interrupted, my voice cutting through her excuse. Was it a mistake when you, Jason, screwed a new deadbolt into my basement door? Was it a mistake when you put my padlock on it, locking my wife inside? Was it a mistake when you left her there for 14 days with 3 bottles of water? Heather made a sound, a small choked gasp, and stepped back. Or was it a mistake, I continued, when you forged my signature and Diane's on a quitclaim deed, a deed transferring ownership of my home to a shell company you registered 6 weeks ago? A company called *** Lawson Developments, LLC ***. Heather's face went completely white. She turned to her husband. Jason? What? What is Lawson Developments? What is he talking about? She didn't even know. She was just a pawn. A stupid, willing, greedy pawn. Jason's facade cracked. The sweat on his forehead was dripping now. You don't know what you're talking about, old man. That was an investment. A simple market play. It was legal. Legal. I almost smiled. You call forgery legal? You call locking a 6-8-year-old woman in a basement a market play? You were going to buy my house from me using my own stolen $90,000 as a down payment and then resell it for $750,000. It is sloppy. It is desperate. And it is pathetic. Jason. Heather was pulling on his arm now, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. What is he talking about? What money? Shut up, Heather. Jason shouted, yanking his arm away. Oh, she doesn't know about that part either, I said, stepping toward them. She only knew about the house. Did you not tell her about the $10,000 cash you took from my safe? Or the $80,000 you drained from my savings account? The account I built for her, in case she ever needed it? I looked at my daughter. He told you it was a loan, didn't he? An investment. Did he not tell you he had already stolen it? Heather looked like she was going to be sick. She backed away from Jason, shaking her head. No. No. Jason, you said we were borrowing it. You had to steal it, Heather, I said, my voice relentless. Because he is desperate. He isn't the man you think he is. You see, I had Mr. Thorne do a little digging while I waited for you. I walked to the large desk. Thorne slid a single folder toward me. I didn't even open it. I just tapped the cover. You think he's an investment banker? He hasn't been a banker for 2 years. He was fired for embezzlement, stealing from his clients. A petty thief who got caught. That's a lie, Jason screamed, his voice cracking. Is it? I asked. Then where do you go every morning, Jason? You aren't meeting clients. You're meeting bookies. You are a compulsive gambler, and you are in very, very deep trouble. Heather was sobbing openly now, hands over her mouth. Jason, you promised, you stopped. He never stopped, I said, my voice like ice. He only got worse. Mr. Thorne's investigator was very thorough. He found the men you owe money to, Jason. The unofficial ones. The ones who don't care about your credit score. I paused, letting the weight of the situation drop on him. They are due tomorrow. Or they break your legs. Or maybe they break Heather's. Jason was shaking, his charade completely gone, replaced by the pure terror of a cornered animal. You can't. So you see, Heather, I said, turning my back on him, focusing only on my daughter. He was desperate. The $90,000 was just a drop in the bucket. The house that would have covered the rest. He had times to have it. He had to have it to save his own skin. I didn't know. She cried. I didn't know about the debt. I didn't know about the insurance. Oh, God. She stopped. I stopped. I turned back to her slowly. The insurance? I asked, my voice deadly calm. What? Insurance? Heather? Her eyes widened with horror. She had said it. She had said the one thing I was waiting for. I mean, she stammered. No. Say it, I said, stepping closer. Please, continue. What insurance policy were you talking about? Jason lunged not at me, but at her. I told you to shut your stupid mouth, he screamed, grabbing her arm. Get your hands off her, one of my security men said, stepping forward. It's all right, gentlemen, I said, raising a hand. He won't do anything. He is just a rat in a trap. I looked at Jason. You're right, Heather. He didn't tell you everything, but he didn't tell me about the insurance either. Mr. Thorne's investigator found that on his own. I walked back to the desk and picked up a second piece of paper. I held it up. A term life insurance policy for $500,000. Taken out 6 weeks ago, the day after I confirmed my flight to Canada, the insured, Diane Cole, my wife. Heather collapsed. She didn't faint. She just folded. Her legs gave out, and she sank to the marble floor in a heap of sobs. And the beneficiary, I continued, eyes fixed on Jason, is not me, not even Heather. The beneficiary is a corporation. Lawson Developments, LLC, ***. I let the paper fall from my hand to the floor. You weren't just trying to rob me, Jason. You were going to cash in the house, the cash. That was just your appetizer. The main course was $500,000. All you needed was for Diane to die. A tragic, unfortunate accident. The confused wife of a grieving husband locking herself in the basement while he was away. Who would question it? Heather was screaming now, a primal, horrible sound. No! Jason! You said you'd let her go. You said it was just for a few days. You said you'd leave her food. You promised me. Jason's face contorted. The mask of the suave banker finally tore away, revealing the monster underneath. He looked down at Heather crawling on the floor and sneered. She was a useless old woman. She was in the way. It was perfect. If you hadn't ruined it, if that old fool hadn't come home early, we would be rich. We would be free. But you were too weak. You ruined everything. I stared at the hatred in his eyes, the utter lack of remorse. Thank you, Jason, I said. He froze, confused by my calm. Thank you for that, I said. That was the last piece I needed. Mr. Thorne, did you get that? Elias Thorne pressed a button on the intercom on his desk. Recording is secure, Mr. Cole. Audio is crystal clear. Jason's face imploded. He looked from the intercom to Thorne, then to me. You, he whispered. You set me up. You set yourself up, son, I said. You just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder in front of 4 witnesses and a digital recorder. I turned to my daughter, staring up at me from the floor, her face a mask of tears and horror. And you, Heather, you just confessed to being an accomplice. Jason's face was a mask of pure, reptilian hatred. He wasn't the smooth-talking banker anymore. He was a cornered rat ready to bite. He looked at me, then at Heather, who was still sobbing on the floor. You, he spat. You did this. You with your games. You're the one who set this all up. I ignored him. I looked only at my daughter. She was the one who mattered. She was the one who had held the key, the one who had betrayed my trust. Jason was just a parasite. But her, she was my blood. Heather, I said, my calm voice cutting through her sobs. He called you stupid. He said you were too weak to see the plan. He was right. She looked up, her face a mess of tears and mascara. What? What plan? I thought it was just the house. Just the $80,000, Jason laughed. A short, ugly sound, like a bark. You really are that dumb, aren't you? You thought we were going through all that trouble for $90,000? That's chump change. Shut up, Jason, I said. But the damage was done. Heather's head whipped toward him. What? What do you mean? What, all that trouble? Jason, what did you do? He took out an insurance policy. Heather, I said, my voice cold and flat. I picked up the sheet of paper from Thorne's desk, the one the investigator had found. I let it drop from my hand, landing on the floor in front of her. She stared at it. Her eyes scanned the page, her breath hitching. Asterisk term life insurance. Diane Cole. Asterisk, beneficiary. Lawson Developments. $500,000. Asterisk. She didn't understand it at first. She was still too slow. Still my foolish, naive daughter. It's an investment policy, she stammered, looking from me to Jason. For the business, right, Jason? It's just normal business. Jason just sneered at her, saying nothing, letting her hang. No, Heather, I said softly, as if explaining a complex math problem to a child. It isn't. You don't take out a $500,000 policy on your stepmother's life right before you plan to lock her in a basement. You do it because you don't expect her to come times out times of the basement. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She went rigid. She stopped crying. She stared at the paper. Then she looked at Jason, the man she had married. The man she had betrayed her family for. You, she whispered, you weren't just keeping her out of the way. You were killing her. She was a useless old woman and she was in the way. Jason roared finally, his composure gone, replaced by ugly, raw rage. It was perfect. The old man leaves. She has a tragic accident. We get the house, we get the cash, and we get the insurance payout. We would have been free. But you, did you with your weak stomach? You ruined it. Heather scrambled up from the floor. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked dead, numb. You lied to me, she said, her voice flat. You told me it was a real estate deal. You told me it was about the house. It was times about the house, he screamed. And the money, and the insurance. It was about times everything asterisk. You just didn't need to know the details because you're too stupid and weak to handle them. So you used me, she said. You used me to get the key. You used me to get the safe combination. You used me to lock the door. I did what I had to do. And the money? She asked, voice shaking. The $80,000. You told me. You told me you needed that for the investment. You said it was a business deal. It was a business deal, you idiot. A gamble. A sure thing. A bet. I interjected, stepping forward. That's what you told her. No, that you owed $214,000 to loan sharks who were planning to break your legs tomorrow. You didn't mention that part, did you, Jason? Heather's head snapped toward me. What? What did you say? He lied to you, Heather, I said, my voice calm. He hasn't had a job in 2 years. He is a compulsive gambler. He has been living off your credit cards. The credit cards times have been paying off. He is a parasite. and when his debts got too big, he decided to cash in his last asset. You and your confused elderly father's family. Heather looked at Jason. He wasn't even denying it, just breathing heavy, eyes darting between me and the guards. Trapped. You told me. You told me they were threatening times us, asterisk, she whispered, voice breaking. You told me if I didn't help, they would hurt me, that they would hurt Dad. So you did it, I said. You locked Diane in the basement to save times him, asterisk. I was scared, she screamed, the confession finally bursting out of her, directed not at me, but at him. He told me it was the only way. He told me it was just for a few days. He swore he would go back and leave her food. He swore he would let her go the second the deal was done. He said it was just to keep her safe, to keep her quiet. I didn't know about the insurance. I didn't know he was. He was leaving her to die. She turned on him, all her fear, all her shame, all her stupid blind love twisting into a singular, focused rage. She was no longer my daughter. She was a woman betrayed. She flew at him, clawing at his face, screaming a sound that wasn't human. You lied to me. You were going to let her die. You were going to make me a murderer. You. Jason shoved her back hard. She fell backward, sprawling across the marble floor in her expensive, foolish clothes. You times are times a murderer, he spat at her, face red, eyes wild. You were just too stupid to see it. You were in on it from the start. You locked the door. You helped me. You're just as guilty as I am. He was right. And she knew it. That was the truth that finally broke her. She stopped screaming. She just lay there on the cold floor, her body shaken by silent, agonizing sobs. She was destroyed. She had been used. She had been a tool, a key to the house, a key to the safe, and now a convenient scapegoat. Jason looked at her, then at me, his chest heaving. He was done. His alliance was gone. His alibi was blown. His wife was now his accuser. I looked at Thorne. He nodded. We had it all. The full motive, the conspiracy, the confession, the coercion, and the final fatal break. Heather, I said, my voice quiet. She looked up at me with hollow eyes. He didn't just lie about the insurance, I said. He lied about the debt. Did he not tell you he was fired for embezzlement 2 years ago? Did he not tell you that you've been living on my money via your credit cards this whole time? He is a thief, a gambler, and a liar. And you were his last, best bet. She closed her eyes. She didn't say another word. She just lay on the cold floor, broken. The alliance wasn't just fractured, it was obliterated. I let the echo of their confessions hang in the vast, silent room. Heather remained curled on the marble floor, her body trembling with silent, racking sobs. She was destroyed, a tool that had been used and discarded. Jason was a different animal. He was breathing hard, his face a mottled purple. The fear was gone, replaced by the rabid, cornered fury of a man who has nothing left to lose. He was trapped, and he knew it. The 2 large men in suits, my security team, had stepped a half-pace forward, hands clasped. They were a solid wall. I stepped away from my daughter. Her part in this was tragic. Her choices were weak. But he was the architect. He was the parasite. I walked back toward the glass wall, looking out at the city lights. You know, Jason, I said, my voice quiet, almost conversational. The most pathetic part of this whole ugly mess isn't the forgery. It isn't even the insurance policy. It's the Times price asterisk. I turned to him. He looked up, eyes narrowed, full of venom. You were willing to coordinate the starvation and death of a good woman, my wife, for what? $90,000 cash? A $750,000 house? You are a small-time desperate man, Jason. You didn't even know the real stakes. That's a lie, he spat, voice raspy. You don't know anything about my situation. Those were business loans. Were they just business? Were they? I asked. Business loans. Business loans usually require you to meet in dark suburban parking lots at 2 a.m. Business partners send you photographs of your own front door as a friendly reminder. They give you a 8-hour deadline before they come to collect. Jason's face went from purple to a sickly, pale white. The blood drained from his face. He hadn't just been caught by me. He realized times I knew about them asterisk. How do you know that? He whispered. Mr. Thorne's investigator is very, very good at his job, I said. He didn't just look at your bank records, Jason. He looked at everything. Your burner phone records. Your text messages. He found your bookie. And then he found the men your bookie sold your debt to, the Moretti brothers. Am I correct? Jason stopped breathing. I saw him physically recoil at the name. He was terrified. $214,000. I said, letting the numbers settle in the quiet room. Due tomorrow, or they were going to start with your knees. Or maybe they were going to start with Heather's. That's why you were so desperate, right? That's why you couldn't wait. That's why you had to sell the house times now, asterisk. He didn't answer. He just stared at me, his mind visibly racing, trying to find an escape route, a lie, anything. He found nothing. You see, I continued, walking slowly toward him, my shoes clicking on the marble. You had a very big, very violent problem. And you thought my money, my house, and Diane's insurance. You thought that was the solution. You thought you could steal your way out of the hole you dug. He finally found his voice, a desperate, rasping laugh. Doesn't matter. It's over. You ruined the sale. You ruined everything. They're still coming for me. They'll find me. And you. You think you're safe now? They'll find you too. They'll find Heather. You just signed our death warrants, you old fool. He was trying to threaten me, still trying to find leverage. No, Jason, I said softly. I don't think they will. He frowned, his bravado wavering. What? I told you. Mr. Thorne is a very thorough man. He is also a very good negotiator. When his investigator discovered your predicament, I asked him to make a call. A call? I am a businessman, Jason, I said. I see problems, and I find efficient solutions. Your debt was a problem. It was making you sloppy, violent, and unpredictable. It was a risk to my daughter and a risk to my wife. So I decided to solve it. What did you do? He stammered, the realization of what I was saying dawning on his face. I had Mr. Thorne contact the Moretti brothers' associates. I explained the situation. I told them I had a personal interest in a small-time gambler named Jason Lawson. They were very receptive. They don't like complications. They don't like police. And your plan, Jason, was attracting a lot of police. I paused, letting him absorb the full weight of it. They were actually quite happy to settle your account, I said. They don't like high-risk, long-term clients who bring so much heat. They prefer a sure thing. Settle? What? What did you do? You paid them? I made them an offer they couldn't refuse, Jason. I bought your debt, all of it. The bookies, the loan sharks, every last cent. Mr. Thorne wired the full $214,000 to an offshore account this morning. The transaction cleared an hour ago. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket. I pulled out my checkbook, not the local bank one. It was bound in dark blue leather with the simple, single-word logo of my holding company. So you see, I said, walking to the massive mahogany desk, you don't owe them anything anymore. Their problem is solved. I sat in my high-back leather chair, the chairman's chair. I looked at him, a predator watching prey now firmly trapped in the snare. You owe times me asterisk. The color vanished from his face. He finally understood the true depth of the hole he was in. He wasn't indebted to violent, predictable thugs anymore. He was indebted to me, a man he couldn't threaten, couldn't manipulate, and couldn't possibly escape. I can't, he stuttered, his body deflating. I don't have that kind of money. You know I don't. You just stopped me from getting it. I know, I said calmly. That's what makes this so satisfying. You destroyed my family. You tried to murder my wife. You turned my daughter into a monster, all for money you didn't even have, to pay a debt you couldn't handle. I opened the checkbook. I picked up a heavy, gold-plated pen from the desk stand. But I am a reasonable man, Jason. I like my accounts balanced. I want to be paid. I want my $214,000. I looked up at him, my gaze flat and hard as steel. Pay me now. He just stared, mouth open, his entire world collapsing in on itself. He had nothing. No money, no house, no insurance payout, no wife. He was trapped in a glass tower 30 stories up, owned body and soul by the man he had tried to destroy. "I can't," he whispered. "I have nothing." "You're wrong," I said. "You still have one thing to give. One thing to pay me with." He looked up, a flicker of pathetic, desperate hope in his eyes. He thought I meant I would make him work. He thought this was still about money. "I don't need your labor, Jason," I said, reading his thoughts. "Nor am I interested in your knees. I am not the Moretti brothers." I paused, letting him hang on the edge. "I am interested in justice." I looked past him, past his ruined, terrified face. I looked past my daughter crying on the floor. I looked toward the polished steel elevator doors at the end of the long lobby. "And I believe your payment," I said, lowering my voice, "has just arrived." Jason stared at me, his mind finally catching up to the reality of the room. He wasn't a gambler anymore. He was a piece on a board he didn't even know existed. His face, which had contorted in rage, crumpled into something else. Despair. "Payment?" he whispered hoarsely. "What? What payment?" "I told you. I have nothing. You stopped the sale. I have nothing." "You're still not listening, Jason," I said, my voice quiet. "I told you, I am not the Moretti brothers. I am not interested in your money. I am not interested in your knees. I already bought your debt. Financially, you and I are square. You owe me nothing." He looked at me with wide eyes, a pathetic, flickering hope. He thought he was free. He thought this was some kind of sick psychological power play. Then what is this? What do you want?" "I want my accounts balanced," I said. "And your debt was never just financial. Your debt is to Diane for every second she spent starving in that basement. Your debt is to my daughter for every lie you told her, for every piece of her soul you corrupted. Your debt is to times me times for betraying my trust. And that kind of debt, Jason, isn't paid with money. It is paid with times time asterisk." Jason frowned, not understanding, and right on cue, we all heard it. The soft, mechanical chime of the private elevator arriving at the penthouse. Jason and Heather flinched. They weren't expecting anyone else. Heather, who had been a heap on the floor, rose up on her elbows, her face a tear-streaked mask of terror. "Who is that?" she whispered. "Who else is coming?" Jason looked at my 2 security men, then at Thorne, then at me. "Who is that?" he demanded, trying to find a shred of his old authority. "I believe, Jason," I said, my voice steady and firm as the polished steel doors slid open with a soundless whisper, "that is your payment arriving now." 2 men stepped out of the elevator. They didn't wear expensive suits. They wore the practical dark blue uniforms of the Metro Police Department. One was an older man, tall and grim-faced, his face carved from granite. I knew him. Asterisk, asterisk, Captain Miller, asterisk, asterisk. The other was a younger, uniformed officer. Heather saw them and let out a sound, a sharp, strangled noise. Jason's body went completely slack. The fight, the anger, the panic, it all just evaporated. He had been outplayed, outsmarted, and outmaneuvered at every turn. He was done. Captain Miller stepped onto the marble floor. His eyes took in the scene in a single practiced sweep. The 2 massive security guards. Thorne, standing impassively at his desk. Heather, a sobbing mess on the floor. Jason looking like a ghost. And me, standing by the window in my $3,000 suit. "Mr. Cole," Miller said, his voice a deep baritone. He nodded at me, a sign of old, unspoken respect. "You called." "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Captain," I said. "The situation has resolved itself just as I anticipated." Jason finally found his voice. It was a last, pathetic gamble. "Officer, thank God. You have to help me. This man is holding us here. He's threatening me. He's crazy. He's some kind of crazy millionaire." Captain Miller ignored him completely. He looked at Jason, then at Heather, as if they were trash he had been called to clean up. "And these are the individuals?" he asked me. "That is Jason Lawson." "And that," I said, the words heavy, "is Heather Lawson, my daughter." Miller nodded slowly. He turned his full attention to Jason. "Jason Lawson, please stand up and place your hands behind your back." "What?" Jason squeaked. "Under what charge? I'm the victim here. He's threatening me. I haven't done anything." Captain Miller looked at him with a deep, weary boredom. "We have a signed, detailed complaint from Mrs. Diane Cole filed from her secure room at a private clinic. We have bank records showing wire fraud and withdrawals matching your company name. We have a copy of a fraudulent deed filed with the county. We have a full confession from a local forger named Paulie regarding his work for you, and he gestured toward the large desk where Thorne waited. I believe Mr. Thorne has a final piece of evidence for us. Thorne pressed a single button on his desk console. Jason's voice, amplified by the office sound system, filled the vast room, hateful, vicious, asterisk. She was a useless old woman. She was in the way. It was perfect. If you hadn't ruined it, we would be rich. Asterisk Miller raised his eyebrows. That's enough for me. Jason Lawson, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, first-degree forgery, and aggravated financial fraud against the elderly. The uniformed officer stepped forward, yanked Jason's arms behind his back, and the sharp times, click-click-click times of handcuffs was the loudest sound in the room. Jason didn't fight. He was an empty shell. But Heather wasn't. As the officer approached her, she crawled across the floor not toward Jason, but toward me. I didn't know he was going to kill her. Did you not know? I asked, my voice soft. I looked at Captain Miller. Her confession is on that tape too, Captain. You said you would let her go. You said it was just for a few days. She was an accessory. She knew. Miller nodded to the uniformed officer. Take her too. The officer had to physically pry her hands off my leg. She fought. She screamed. She was a wild animal thrashing on the marble floor. You can't do this. I'm your daughter, she shrieked as they hauled her up. You're supposed to protect me. He's my father. You'll regret this. You'll be all alone, you old bastard. You'll die alone. They dragged her and the silent, ghostly Jason into the elevator. The steel doors closed, cutting off her screams. The penthouse was silent again. Thorne walked over to me, holding the small digital recorder. A perfect confession, Mr. Cole. Both of them. I walked back to the window. It doesn't feel perfect. I looked down at the city, 30 stories below. I knew in a few moments I would see the blue and red lights of the squad cars pull away from the curb. I thought about what Jason had said. He thought his options were the Moretti brothers or me. He thought the choice was between a quick, violent death or a long, painful financial death. He thought he was playing his game. He never considered the third option. He was wrong, Elias, I said, watching the squad car merge into traffic. The choice was never between the gangs and me. The choice was always between paying his debt in money or paying it in time. I looked at the empty elevator. That, I said, was option 2. The penthouse, with its cold marble and skyscraper views, felt like a fortress. But times place, this quiet, sterile room in Dr. Sterling's private clinic felt like a confessional. I had won the war up there in that glass tower, but this was where I had to face the casualties. Sterling had met me in the hall. His face was somber. She is stable, Harrison. The fluids are working. Her kidney function is improving. She is. She is a very strong woman. But she is quiet. She hasn't said much beyond the initial report. She just stares out the window. I nodded, throat tight. Is she? She is a survivor, Sterling said, stopping me before I could ask the question I really dreaded. But the woman who walked in here is not the same one who used to live in your house. Be ready for that. I pushed the door open. The room was bathed in soft afternoon light. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and expensive soap. Diane was sitting up in bed, not looking at the door, but staring out the window at the trees below. She was clean. Her hair had been washed and brushed, though it was still painfully thin. She was wearing a simple, soft hospital gown. She had color in her face. She looked like Diane again, but smaller, harder. Diane, I said softly. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes met mine. They weren't the warm, laughing eyes I had known for 25 years. They were still, clear, and as cold as the marble in my office. Harrison, she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a greeting. It was a statement. It's over, honey, I said, voice thick. I pulled a chair close to her bed. It's done. They are arrested. Jason and Heather. Both of them are in jail. She just nodded. Once. Her eyes went back to the window. Sterling told me, she said, voice monotone. The police were here. They took my official statement. The silence in the room stretched. It was heavy, uncomfortable. I had faced Jason's animal rage, but this stillness from Diane terrified me. I needed to fix this. I needed to make her understand. I needed to find a way back to the world we had before. He manipulated her. "Diane," I said, leaning forward, hands gripping my knees. "You have to know that." He manipulated her. I had Thorne run a full report. He is a monster, a gambler, indebted for over $200,000 to loan sharks. He was fired 2 years ago. He was desperate. He was threatening her. I was talking too fast. I knew I was doing it. I was making excuses. He told her they were threatening to hurt Times, her asterisk. I continued. To hurt Times, me asterisk. He told her this was the only way. He lied about the insurance policy. She didn't know he was. She didn't know the full plan. She isn't a monster, Diane. She is. She is weak. She was just terrified. I finished, my own words ringing hollow in the quiet room. I waited for her to nod, to agree, to give me something. Diane turned her head from the window. She looked at me for a long, long time. I could see every line in her face, the lines of our life together, the new, hard lines from the last 2 weeks. "Weak," she said. Her voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was low and sharp as a razor. "Is that what you call it, Harrison? Weak?" "Diane. He is a professional con man. He lied to." "He didn't just lie to her, Harrison," she interrupted. And her voice was so cold it stopped my heart. He seduced her. He didn't just threaten her with violence. He promised her a fantasy, a life she thought she deserved. A life where Times was the only thing standing in the way. "No," I insisted, shaking my head. "She is my daughter. She isn't. She is. Times, your Times, daughter." Diane agreed, her eyes never leaving mine. "But she isn't a child. She is a 40-year-old woman. And I was in that basement for 14 days, Harrison. I had nothing but time. Time to think. Time to remember every visit, every glance, every time she looked at me with that impatience in her eyes. She took a sip of water from the glass by her bed. Her hand was perfectly steady. Do you think he forced her to lock that door, Harrison? Do you think he held a gun to her head? No, She was scared. Times was scared. Diane's voice rose for the first time, cracking with a sudden, hot fury that stunned me. I was down there for 2 days, screaming until my throat was raw. I beat on that door until my knuckles were bloody and splintered. I begged her, "Harrison." Not Jason times her asterisk. I screamed, "Heather, please, it's me. It's Diane. Let me out. It's a mistake." Tears started rolling down my own face. I didn't want to hear this. "And do you know what she did, Harrison?" Diane continued, her voice dropping back to that icy whisper. She came back. On the 3rd day, I heard her footsteps on the kitchen floor. I heard her stop right on the other side of that door. I put my face against the wood. I begged her, "Heather, thank God. Please, honey, open the door." I closed my eyes. "What did she do, Diane?" I heard her sigh. "She sighed," Diane said, her voice breaking, but not with sadness, with contempt. She sighed like I was an annoyance. And then she said, "I'm sorry, Diane, but this is for the best. It's just business." And then Harrison, Diane's face contorted. Then she turned on the radio in the kitchen. She turned it up loud. Classical music. She turned it up to drown out my screams. My heart stopped. She had come back, heard her pleas, and turned up the music. "She isn't weak, Harrison," Diane said, her voice flat and final. "Jason was the architect. He drew the blueprints. But Heather was the one holding the hammer. She was the one who drove the nails. She checked on me, heard me screaming, and walked away. The food," I stammered, thinking of the cracker wrappers. "She left you food." "Yes," Diane said with a bitter laugh that was more terrible than a scream. 3 bottles of water and 2 packs of crackers for 2 weeks. That wasn't mercy, Harrison. That was calculation. That was just enough to make sure I didn't die too fast, to make sure I suffered, to make sure it looked accidental. She didn't want to just kill me. She wanted to erase me. And she did. The Heather you knew is gone a long time ago. You just refuse to see it. I leaned back in the chair. There was nothing left to say. The last desperate thread of hope I had, the idea that my daughter was a victim, that she was redeemable, was gone. Diane had taken it, held it up to the light, and showed me the rot inside. I had been trying to find an excuse for Heather, but the truth was I was just trying to find an excuse for myself. An excuse for my own blindness. For my own failure. I had raised a monster. I had loved her, spoiled her, protected her, and in doing so, I had hidden the truth of her from myself. "You're right," I whispered. The words felt like broken glass in my throat. "You're right. She isn't weak. She's gone." Diane just nodded once, her face grim. She turned back to the window. The last part of my old life, the part that was a father, died in that quiet, sterile hospital room. Now, only the cold, hard truth of what came next remained. 6 months. That's how long it took the wheels of justice to turn. 6 months of legal motions, of depositions from lawyers in expensive suits arguing over details. The trial itself was a media sensation in the capital. Asterisk, the basement plot asterisk, they called it. The story of the greedy, pathetic daughter and her monstrous, gambling husband. I sat in the front row every day. Beside me, Diane sat straight-backed and silent. She had regained her weight, but something in her eyes had been permanently extinguished. She wore simple, elegant clothes. She wasn't trying to blend in anymore. She looked like the wife of a very wealthy man, and she watched Heather and Jason with a quiet, bottomless hatred that was colder than any rage I could muster. Jason tried his old tricks. He tried to charm the jury, wore his best suit, tried to claim it was all a business dispute gone horribly wrong, tried to paint me as a manipulative shadow figure, but the evidence was too much. Thorne had given the prosecution everything: the forged deed, the wire fraud, the bank records, the realtor's testimony, the canceled check from me to the Moretti brothers proving his motive, and of course, the audio recording from the penthouse. When the jury heard Jason's voice times, she was a useless old woman. She was in the way. It was perfect. Asterisk, it was over. But the final, devastating blow came from Heather. To save herself, she did the only thing she had left to do. She turned on him. She took the stand, weeping, and painted herself as the ultimate victim. She told the court how Jason had threatened her, how he had manipulated her, how he had preyed on her fear of his debts. She admitted everything. Admitted locking the door. Admitted lying to me on the phone. Admitted being an accomplice to the fraud. Her confession, meant to save her own skin, buried Jason completely. The jury deliberated for 45 minutes. I watched Jason's face when the foreman read the verdict. Guilty, on all counts. His arrogance finally shattered, revealing the small, terrified man underneath. The judge wasn't merciful. "Mr. Lawson," he said, voice ringing with contempt. "You are a predator. You preyed on the weak. You preyed on your own family. I sentence you to the maximum allowed by this state. 20 years. Jason just stared. 20 years. As for you, Mrs. Lawson, the judge said, turning to my daughter. Your testimony was self-serving, but it was useful. You are just as guilty, but you are also perhaps the most tragic figure in this room. You had everything. You had a father who loved you, and you threw it all away. For him." He paused. 10 years. Heather simply collapsed, a low, animal wail escaping her as the bailiffs lifted her up. I waited a month. I let her settle into her new home, a 6x8 concrete cell. Then I went to see her one last time. The visiting room was loud, filled with the murmur of other broken families. She was behind thick glass, looking pale and thin in a drab gray jumpsuit. Her hair was stringy. The fire was gone from her. She picked up the phone. "Dad," she whispered, voice raspy from crying. "You came." "I came to say goodbye, Heather," I said, my voice flat. "Dad, please," she begged, tears springing instantly. "Don't do this. 10 years isn't forever. I'm still your daughter. I'm still your little girl. We can fix this. I'll pay you back. I'll work. I'm so sorry, Daddy. He made me do it." I looked at her. I looked at this 40-year-old woman still trying to play the role of a child. "No, Heather," I said. "He didn't make you do anything." "He threatened me," she said. "He did. I agreed. And you were scared. But that's not times why times you did it. You did it because you were greedy. You did it because you believed his lies. You did it because you wanted the easy money. I leaned closer to the glass. Diane was screaming, "Heather!" I listened to the front door camera logs. She was screaming your name. She was begging you for help. And you went into the kitchen and turned on the radio. You turned up the music to drown her out. She flinched as if I had slapped her. How? How do you know? I know everything, Heather. I know it was times who came back on the third day. Not Jason. You heard her begging. You heard her tell you she was thirsty. And you walked away. You left her to die. No, she shrieked. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. You knew exactly what to do, I said. You just chose him. You chose the money. You aren't weak, Heather. You are just rotten to the core. Why are you here, Dad? She finally whispered. The fight gone, her face hollow. Are you just here to torture me? No, I said. I'm here to answer the question that is really nagging you. She looked up. You aren't wondering if I still love you. You are wondering about the money. You are sitting there doing the math. 10 years. You'll be 50. You're wondering if your rich father will still be around for you to inherit. You're wondering if the golden goose is still worth waiting for. Her silence was my answer. Well, I am here to tell you, Heather. The money is gone. What? The house in the capital. I sold it. The accounts. I closed them. Cole Holdings is being dissolved. You're lying, she stammered. I'm not. I am cutting you off. You will not receive a single dollar from me, not now, not ever. When you walk out of here, you will have nothing. No house, no trust fund, no inheritance. You are disinherited. You can't, she screamed, slapping the glass. I'm your family. I'm your only child. The law, I said, my voice flat and final. The law says a man can do whatever he wants with his own money, and Mr. Thorne is very, very good at making my wishes legally binding. I stood up from the stool. Goodbye, Heather. No. Daddy, don't leave me. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry. I turned my back on the glass. I walked out of that prison, her screams echoing behind me, and I didn't look back. I went home, but home wasn't the small brick house anymore. I had sold that for cash to a developer who bulldozed it the next day. I erased it. Diane and I moved. We packed 2 suitcases each and left that city behind. We live in a villa on the coast now. Our house isn't a hidden little dwelling. It is a modern structure of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, the kind of house Jason and Heather only dreamed of. Diane is in the garden right now. She's planting roses. She hums when she gardens. I haven't heard her hum in years. Elias Thorne flew in last week. We sat on the terrace watching the seals on the rocks below. He brought the final papers. I signed the last page of my new living trust. It is done, Thorne said. The *** Cole Family Foundation *** is now the sole beneficiary of your entire estate. And Heather? I asked. Just to be sure. She is mentioned by name. Thorne confirmed. She and any of her descendants are explicitly and permanently disinherited. I nodded. The Foundation's official charter, the Diane Cole Fund for Victims of Domestic and Elder Abuse. My daughter wanted my money so desperately. She tried to steal a house and $90,000. In the end, her actions ensured that my entire fortune, all of it, will now be used to help every single person in the world who is a victim of someone like times her ***. She didn't just lose her freedom, she lost an empire, and I lost a daughter. But Diane and we finally found our peace. This story teaches us that true wealth is not measured by the money we accumulate, but by the integrity we keep and the respect we earn. It is a harsh reminder that greed can corrupt even the closest family bonds, blinding people to the value of love and loyalty. But it also shows that strength is often hidden. Underestimating someone based on their simple appearance can be a fatal mistake, because the quietest person in the room is often the one holding all the power. True justice isn't just about punishment, it's about reclaiming your peace and dignity. What would you have done if you were in Harrison's shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our growing family for more stories.